I wanted to come down for this one.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, March 19, 2019. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, Pastor Dan Adams, come on up with Faith Baptist Church and open us up in prayer.
May you bow your heads for a word of prayer. Lord, we do thank you for this day. We just thank you for your goodness. We think of David who said, I believe in the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And Lord, you have been very good to us. We thank you for that. Lord, now as we look at different issues, we're thankful that we don't have to do any issues that would break your word. We're thankful that we work about how to save children. And Lord, we just thank you again for the willingness of the council here to give their time and efforts to do and help for the betterment of our area. We love you and need you, and we pray for your safety. And then, Lord, personally, we thank you that you're going to fix our road. And in the future, where a young lady lost their life from a car accident walking down the side of our road, which still breaks our heart. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, item 2 is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Support. Okay, motion supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 3 is a consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file the minutes of the March 5th, 2019 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, to accept and place on file the general savings, pooled funds, and CD reports from the treasurer. C, approve and place on file the revenue expense report and balance sheet for the period ending February 28th, 2019. D, accept with regret the resignation of Connie Velliquette from the Beautification Committee. E, accept with regret the resignation of Charlene Adams from the Beautification Committee. Look for a motion.
Make a motion to accept consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clements?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 4 is presentations. The Monroe County Sheriff's update. Chief Deputy Pauli, come on up. Thank you for being here. Miss seeing you around the township, so it's...
I know, I miss being here. Thanks for inviting me. Actually, 2 to 3 weeks ago, I met with Trustee Montre. He had some questions about certain things that we do, about our report that we provide, and we sat for probably a good couple hours and talked. And then most recently, I met with Mr. Francis yesterday. So I'm here to kind of explain a couple of things, community policing that we do here in the township and with the Sheriff's Office. And I also want to identify how we view patrol time, complaint time, and other time. I think that was a source of confusion over the past several months. So hopefully we can clear up those items. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have, so feel free to fire away when you want. Community policing, at its basic definition, it's interaction with the citizens and building relationships to prevent crime. That is the most basic definition that community policing is. The sheriff has adopted that. He supports that, and that has been in place since 2013 when he first took office. He ran on that in 2012. Part of community policing, we respond to all calls for service, both criminal and non-criminal. A lot of people feel that we only handle criminal complaints, but that's not the case at all. We go to many non-criminal events such as suicidal subjects, mental health orders, neighbor disputes, landlord tenants. Those are some of the non-criminal things that we respond to. And part of that effort is we attempt to resolve disputes before the crime is committed. Again, neighbor disputes, nonviolent family offenses, and landlord or tenant issues. Those are the efforts that are under community policing. I'm just going to give you some examples. I've been down here since 2013. As you know, I went up to Monroe at the end of, or the back half of 2017. So I started thinking, you know, some of the highlights or some of the things that we've done while I was down here, you know, supervising the Bedford deputies. This is not all, there's much more to this list, and I could probably go on for an hour of some of the things that we've done, but these are just some of the highlights from 2013 through the middle of 2017. In 2013, unfortunately, as a result of the Sandy Hook tragedy, the sheriff, and this is an example of community policing. The sheriff implemented daily school visits to all the schools in response to the Sandy Hook tragedy. As you can imagine, parents and school officials were on edge, and it was the sheriff's direction to make the deputies' presence known both inside the school as well as outside the school, doing the reports in the parking lot, being basically generally visible. And then ironically, just recently, I think we received a request to maybe have a deputy be involved in one of the other elementary schools from time to time, writing reports, doing the very thing that we started back in 2013, when they're not responding to calls for service. So basically, they would do their reports at the school, have their presence known. If a call for service comes in, they leave the school.
Just to clear that up, that was me that called them. I wanted to, instead of them sitting in this office or wherever they're going to do their reports, I figured we set up a desk at one of the schools and they could do the reports at one of the schools that doesn't have protection. So just to have more of a presence there, so.
And we think that's a great idea, too. Just some other examples. Yearly, Mount Carmel Church hosts a Toledo Symphony Orchestra. Every year we get a request from the security there asking for help. Usually we send 2 to 3 cars to help with parking, both in or at the beginning of the event as well as at the end of the event. The yearly fireworks event, we send our people there to patrol the grounds, to help with traffic let out. High school sporting events. We're both inside and outside, especially out in the parking lot. Football games have a tendency to draw a big crowd. Typically, we'll send a car or 2 to patrol the parking lot to chase after the kids that are causing some issues. This may surprise some people. We've had requests from people to send a deputy to the daddy-daughter dance. We've done that almost every year that I've been down here. We get a request every year. We give talks to schools, churches, neighborhood meetings. We'll talk to anybody. If somebody requests a presentation, if we can fit it in our day or if we have staff permitting, we'll do it. We have no problem with that. We give tours at the substation. We explain all the functions of the patrol car. Typically, we get Boy Scout clubs as well as the Girl Scouts. We show them around. We show them what it's like to be a police officer, show them inside the patrol car, and let them see the substation. One of the biggest things that we do is we've had overwhelming requests, and I can tell you in my time from 2013 through mid-2017, we have an overwhelming request for neighborhood patrols. That is probably the biggest request that we've had. And I'll touch on 2 that come to mind recently, but people will call, they'll say there's some speeders, or people are, you know, running through stop signs, going over, breaking into cars, you name it. It's in the neighborhoods that people want us. And just recently, we had a request at Stony Brook, right across the street here, when school was let out. A lot of the kids were bypassing the Dean and Jackman Road intersection. They were cutting through the neighborhood, driving recklessly. For the past couple of weeks, we assigned a couple of deputies, 1 to 2 deputies, in the subdivisions, and they made a significant impact. I've actually gotten compliments for that. That's part of the community policing effort. Somebody calls, we respond. Another one that comes to mind was Waterford subdivision. want to say it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, people were running a stop sign. We sent deputies in, and in 1 hour, we caught 4 people running a stop sign. They were issued citations. That pretty much stopped it for the next 2 weeks. The word traveled really quickly. They were pretty happy with us there. And there's so many more subdivisions, and neighborhoods and streets where people have called and asked for our presence, and we do it. We assign them for a couple of weeks. Another thing that we've done, and I don't know if you have this, but we have a SNAP program. It's a brochure, Safe Neighborhood Awareness Program, SNAP. We've actually went door to door. We went and solicited people for their concerns. We passed this out. It gives you a how-to or what to do should you be a victim of a crime or you think you're going to be a victim of a crime. You know, we sent people door to door in neighborhoods along, you know, traveled roads like Crab and Stearns, and we talk to people. We pass that out. That's part of community policing. We perform home checks for people out of town. We check on property, people that maybe go down to Florida for the winter, or they're on an extended vacation. We do that all hours of the day, the middle of the night, during the day, you name it.
Hey, Pauli, that brings me to a point I have. Just recently, in the last 6-8 months, we've been working closely with the chief to stop the chief and the fire crew to going to burning complaints. You know, and, you know, they're sending whole crews out to an illegal burn. So the ordinances help with that to, you know, free them up so they have time to do other things, you know. And,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just curious if, you know, because we're putting ordinance people on to have full coverage, you know, during the burn season, during the busy seasons. Would it help if we were taking calls for noise complaints, dog complaints, you know, like what you just said, with different things? I mean, that way you guys are freed up to do more police work. Because, I mean, I'm sure you guys take calls for the parks and different, you know what I mean?
Sure.
We could take some of those calls so you're not
Well, it would
overburdened
help.
with them.
It would help, but I can tell you, and I think Trustee Clements can probably vouch for this, you never know what's going to happen when you go to these non-criminal complaints, burning, you know, people become volatile. I'm not going to say no, that the ordinance department can't go out there, but they're not armed, they're not, well, you actually have 2 that are police trained, but I can't say, yeah, that would be a great idea, because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what kind of bad days that they're having.
We take noise complaints
Sure.
and stuff like that. I'm just saying, some of the lesser criminal, you know,
Right.
calls, if we could offset that a little bit, you know, I think that would be something to at least get together and talk about.
But that's what we provide that. We will, the idea of community policing is to go and interact with the community, period. And a lot of times what we found is we get valuable information in return. And that's kind of the payback for us is, you know, we build relationships with people. We find out who's breaking into cars, who's breaking into homes, who's got this stolen property in that garage, or who's doing what over here. That's the payback, that's the return. That's why we support tremendously school resource officers. They build relationships with students, and that's why I'm excited about maybe putting another deputy in the school.
I think we should have a resource officer in every
I do
one
too.
of our schools.
And I think funding prevents it. But, you know, again, building relationships. Law enforcement has changed. You know, I've been here 22 years, and I came at the beginning of the community policing effort, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that's here to stay, and I think that's the right way to do it.
Okay.
So that's, if you have any other questions on community policing, I'll move on to patrol, other, and complaint time. So I hope to provide some clarity here. I'll start with patrol time. Traditional traffic enforcement, pulling over speeders, stop sign violators, one headlights, you name it, anything against the traffic code. We carry that as patrol time until it becomes a felony or a misdemeanor. So most traffic complaints or traffic issues are civil infractions. Should that move towards a felony or a misdemeanor, then that would be complaint time. So if it stays as a civil infraction, speeders, stop signs, That'll stay as patrol time. We'll calculate that as patrol time on the report. Neighborhood patrols. Again, I told you, we get lots of calls, like it's overwhelming majority. That is considered patrol. We're driving through the neighborhoods, that we classify that as patrol time. Business patrols, nighttime checks, we encourage our deputies to get out of their car and walk the backs of buildings. The school, I remember years ago, the school used to always have open doors. We would find them because we would get out of the cars and do that, especially on the midnight shift. School checks, I talked about that, that's patrol time. Specific requests for patrol, subdivision neighborhood, that's patrol time. Motorist assist, patrol time. And these are just some of the examples of what we classify as patrol time. Moving on to complaint time, that's any dispatched call for service. So anytime someone calls 911, as soon as we get the call, we're on the clock for what we classify as complaint time. And that goes really through the report until we finish writing the report. We might leave the driveway, go over to a parking lot, and we might start writing a report. That is complaint time until we're done with that report. Then we're going to move on to something else. Self-initiated investigation, that's complaint time. Time spent collecting evidence and processing scenes, that's complaint time. Interviews of witnesses, victims, suspect, that's all complaint time. Report writing, time spent taking people to jail, that's complaint time. Any patrol activity that turns into a felony or a misdemeanor. Traffic crashes are patrol time or complaint time, so is subpoena service and assisting other deputies or neighboring agencies. I think this is the other time is what has been the confusing part. I guess in its very simplistically, other time is anything other than complaint or patrol time. We could probably have 100 categories as how we classify time, but honestly, we're just not going to bog our deputies down with that kind of reporting. So we have 3 categories: complaint, patrol, and other. So if it's not patrol, if it's not complaint, it must be other. And other time, typically, right off the top, I can tell you, it takes about 15 to 30 minutes at the beginning of a shift for you to check your car, check your lights, make sure there's no damages, check the rear seat of the patrol car for contraband or weapons. That's all done at the beginning of every shift, of every deputy that starts. That's what they're supposed to do. When we're done, they load their vehicle with their personal items, and they get ready to go. They come into the substation, they got to check their emails, they got to check their voicemails, and they got to respond to those. Somebody could have 10 emails or 5 voicemails, and they make those phone calls. Now, they're in service, and they're ready to go should a call come in, but that takes time. So typically, 15 to 30 minutes for the beginning of a shift. Lunch, the guys and gals, they get 30 minutes for lunch. That's other time. So right there you have an hour-ish of other time on every shift. And at the end of the shift, everything that we did to get ready for the shift, we kind of do it in reverse order when we get done with the shift. That's about another half hour. And in addition to that, we have the body cameras that we got to upload the video. So that takes time. Also, which is classified as other time, is any vehicle maintenance issues, oil changes, car washes, taking cars to the repair facility for major damages, minor damage. That takes time. Meetings with supervisors, that's other time. Fueling it takes 10 minutes, but that's classified as other time. Attending various meetings is outlined in the community policing effort. Tours, talks, that's all other time. It's not patrol, it's not complaint. Any training that we do, any spot training that we do on shift, that's other time. Weapon maintenance, that's other time. And again, like I said, in its most simplistic form, it's anything other than patrol and complaint time. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any thoughts or questions?
I just have one. Chief Deputy, I want to tell you, I appreciate what you guys do. I think having come from that line of work, I realize how other can bog you down in a day very quickly. And I also think if you would speak to it a little bit, I think at times people don't realize that given the resources the sheriff's office has, deputies don't have the luxury of responding to a call, writing a 2-sentence narrative, and being done with it. And there's a substantial amount of work that our road patrol deputies continue to do And I think people have this misconception that they respond, it goes to detectives, and then it's just dealt with. So I was going to ask you about that. I also was going to ask you if you would touch on how the sheriff views input as far as the ebb and flow. I know the couple times I talked with you when you were down here dealing with Sergeant Moody, I think you're very responsive to needs and requests, and you know, I know the supervisor calls your office from time to time and with special requests. In places I've worked, I've often seen a blind ear to that, where people simply don't want input, they're not looking for feedback. The sheriff and, or in my case, the chief of police has a vision, and they're not going to move from that. That hasn't been my experience with the sheriff, but I wanted to see if you would address it from your perspective, because I think it's relevant, because I hear a lot of times this board talk about, well, we ought to be able to direct this activity or that activity. And maybe if you could speak to that a little bit, I think it would help.
Well, like I said, yes, those are great questions, and I'll probably have to ask you to repeat the first one. But I'll speak to the second one first. The sheriff, like I said, when he did his campaign, he went door to door. He had retired from the sheriff's office. He had a whole year to campaign. He went door to door, not just in this community, everywhere. And the overwhelming response was they want people, or our deputies, to respond to their needs, their services, their requests, their, you know, if it's a non-criminal complaint, people want us to be there. They want us to be in the neighborhoods. They want us to be visible in the neighborhoods. They want us to say hi to kids. They want us to play football with the kids. And I'm not talking every day. I'm not, you know, that's not all we do. But time permitting, and it be involved, interact with the community, and create relationships. That's his vision. That's his vision. He will respond. I don't know of a time that we didn't do what we could to help somebody's request. I mean, there's been times where I had to turn them down because we just didn't have staffing, or maybe somebody called in sick. And I'm very honest with people up front, and I know Sergeant Moody is too when they call him. So that's his vision. Now, if you would repeat that first question.
The first was, would you speak to a little bit about how our deputies aren't just responding to calls, but they're actually working calls?
Oh, yeah.
Through the process?
Down here in Bedford, you enjoy a service. We have detectives that are funded by the county. And we're fortunate to have one of the best detectives that I've been around in 20-some years, and Jeff Hooper down here, assigned down here. He's funded through the county. He's not funded by Bedford, but he does the majority of his work in Bedford, in addition to helping the deputies investigate their complaints or doing traditional detective stuff. He also answers the front door, and that's what I did too. So, you know, people would want to, you know, come in and drop off their medication, and that's some of the things that Jeff Hooper specifically does. But to your point on the deputies and their investigations, when they get sent to a call, they're typically investigating that call from start to finish, unless it's a complex felony, major violent offense like a robbery, sexual assault, or a homicide. Then it would get turned over to the detective bureau, and then typically we'd send all our detectives from Monroe to investigate that complaint. But typically your burglaries, you know, detective doesn't respond to that. Now the detective will oversee and try to correlate to other burglaries or other larceny from autos and try to get trends and solve crimes that way. But the day-to-day stuff, it's the deputy from start to finish.
And we're still not using an expediter here in Bedford. If someone calls, they actually lay eyes on a detective who responds if they ask for it, correct?
That is correct. This is the only township or the only area that we do not send a phone call to the expediter. And we have an expediter up in Monroe for what that is. If a call for service comes in, that's no suspects, you know, really no chance of solving the crime, and typically we get that information from the caller, then we would have a expediter, that's what we call them, a deputy. They would call, take the report. Typically it's an insurance report. We don't do that down here in Bedford. We will send the deputy, and that's something that's been in place for as long as I can remember.
And the benefit, again, is community policing.
Community policing.
Yeah. I think given the finite resources you have, I'm amazed at the job that you do, because I agree. We live in a world where everybody talks about getting in front of problems, and that's the philosophy that you guys employ. If we make those connections on small events, the intelligence that's yielded becomes relevant in other areas. So I appreciate what you guys do, and thank you for coming down tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Yes.
No questions?
No,
Comment?
he answered any question I might have.
All right.
Is that right with you?
No,
Okay,
totally.
I'll raise my hand when I want to talk. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I
Yeah, thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank
Very
you.
informative.
Thank you.
You're going to hang around after public comment, I'm sure.
No, I gotta go.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, buddy, take care. Okay, that brings us to public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only, and just address your comments to the board. Thank you.
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. This is in regards to 4A and also information under Monroe County Sheriff's contract summaries for 2019, February 2019. Nothing changes when it comes to traffic enforcement in Bedford Township, and this is distressing to me, not only as a township resident, but also as a retired police officer. Every month it is almost a carbon copy of the month before. It has been that way now for the 2 years I've been attending these township meetings. In the last 2 years, there have been well over 500 accidents each year in this township, and if this year continues at its current pace, it will be 600 for 2019. There is rarely any mention of this statistic or the fact that every month there are numerous hours on patrol by contract officers and no enforcement action. In January 2019, it was 419.75 hours on patrol without one citation being written, and in February 2019, it was 243.25 hours on patrol without a single traffic citation being written. Of the 117 traffic citations that were written the first 2 months of this year, one officer wrote 46 of those citations. There were 108 accidents in the first 2 months of 2019. My complaint has been for over 2 years now, is that this township receives little traffic enforcement, and yet there have been thousands of hours on patrol without one single traffic citation being issued. When I have the time during the 5-minute public comments, I will expand my concern about this issue. I feel that this board is probably fed up with me, but for me to say nothing would be against my nature. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments? Okay, seeing none, moving on to new business. 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberg?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $393,361.35. Fire District, $43,906.01. Police Fund, $1,129.30. Park Fund, $512.89. Transit System Fund, $20,866. Library Fund, $5,425.49. Enchanted Forest SAD, $88,435. Green Hills SAD, $142,900. Barber Lee Harmony, $38,115. Downtown Development Authority, $373.51. Sewer O&M Fund, $8,166.44. Trust and Agency Fund, $758.20, for a grand total of $743,949.19.
Motion is supported by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Prony?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, request to rezone from R2A, one-family residential, to RME, elderly housing residential, on a portion of parcel number 5802-032-055-60, also known as 3199 Stearns Road. Ms. Tinnevery, would you like to?
No. Yes. You asked me before.
She jokes a lot with
I
me,
like
just so
to.
you guys know.
I like to keep him on his toes. As you can see in the handout, the drawing is the corner, near the corner of Stearns and Secor Road. A few meetings ago, we rezoned the corner lot, and then next to the veterinarian starts this, this zoning. We rezoned portion, C3. This is the next section on that development there to be zoned RME, which is for senior. It's a development similar to Aspen Grove, where there would be a step-down facility. You come in, you're assisted living, and you can stay as you maybe worsen in your health. Of course, we all know that to rezone a parcel, it's not based on the use of it. However, at RME, there's only that one use. Well, I guess it could be multiple family type of facility, but that's what the gentleman that came talked about and zoned. So I'd like to make a motion,
Okay.
if that's it.
No, go ahead. They're representing the housing. We can ask
okay.
questions after the motion. Go ahead.
Okay, no, go ahead. No, go ahead. I didn't know.
Sam Martin, 5275 Conestoga, Flushing, Michigan. I'm one of the owners of this project.
Evan Priest, I'm an engineer for Mr. Martin.
Okay, this is the owner of the developer. This is not the owner of the parcel.
Correct.
But there's an agreement with the parcel owner that this will be the development.
How much traffic do you feel like this type of development brings?
Because it's an assisted living facility, there's really not a lot of traffic. The residents that will be living there, even though they can come in independent, most of them won't have cars. And if they do have a car, it's more for security to see it out in the parking lot, not really to take off and go. And basically, if they have any families visiting, unfortunately, they don't visit on a day-to-day basis. It'd be nice if they did, but unfortunately, they don't. So there's really not a whole lot of traffic that really goes in and out of there. Maybe shift change, and we usually have on each shift maybe 6 to 7 employees between 7 a.m., 3 p.m., and then 11 a.m. or 11 p.m.
Making me feel bad about my grandma. I don't go see her every day.
Yeah.
Maybe we should see her more often. Okay, well, that's one of my questions. You know, I know that a lot of the neighbors were concerned about traffic, so for me, it helps the situation with the traffic, so I think it's a good fit. Mr. Steiner?
Just to top that off, I mean, with what you said, Mr. Peroni, from a traffic flow standpoint, it's going to be a lot less than if you had a bunch of homes under R2A.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, R2A, you're going to get, you know, maybe 2 parents and maybe no kids, or maybe 5 kids, and maybe part of those have cars as well. So, you know, my mother was in Aspen Grove, and, you know, I was there almost daily, and you'd see some of the same people almost all the time, but you're right, the people just don't show up. Sometimes it's because they don't have family. Other
Right.
times because people just don't make the time. It's not their priority, unfortunately. But I can definitely see that the traffic flow pattern is going to be less than a full-blown R2A.
Are you guys going to try to keep walkability flow through the neighborhood? I mean, so these neighbors can walk and get over to the DDA safely? I mean, because I know there'll be 2 C3 develop, you know what I mean? You could actually walk through and, I mean, it'd probably be nice.
We've had some preliminary meetings with the planning department. and
You come a little closer
staff.
to the mic.
Sorry. We've had some preliminary meetings with the planning staff and your other consultants, and that's been discussed, and we're
Is that
willing
something you
to-
guys look like you're?
We're willing to
towards?
cooperate with that, sure.
I think it's a great idea, and I believe the DDA would concur. They probably want some walkability, so. Cool. Any other questions from board members?
But as you know, they're not bound by this in the rezoning, what you just asked. That's something that the
Yep.
planning commission will have to undertake in their site plan review.
You can do, or you could do your motion now if you'd like.
Okay, right now? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we rezone, sorry, my bifocals aren't working, portion, a 7, plus or minus 7 acre portion of parcel number 5802-032-055-60 from R2A Single Family Residential to RME Elderly Housing Residential located east of Secor Road, otherwise known as 3199 Stearns Road, Lambertville 48144. As it is consistent with the township's master plan, it follows the master plan future land use designation for mixed uses. It provides for suitable transitional zoning uses between the commercial and uses in the core business district of the township and the adjacent single-family residential uses. It is supported by adequate utility and road infrastructure, and adequate room, is being preserved both south and east of the subject portion for buffering and or screening to alleviate some of the possible negative impacts to the potential higher density residential uses. That's it.
Second.
Motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Mr. Steiner?
Could we just add a friendly amendment that it's going to be subject to all of the approvals and agencies as put forward and recommended by the Planning Commission as well?
Sure, but I think, okay, yes.
Okay. Discussion, any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye. Excuse me. Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. And I would like to say, I hope this has been a smooth, process for you guys, and say welcome to Bedford. We're excited to have you. So, okay, item 8C, request for approval of ordinance number 27A-11, an amendment to the water supply system for 11. Tom Graham.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to come to the meeting tonight, and thank you, Trudy, for putting this on the agenda, okay? So Ordinance 27 was the original water ordinance for this township, and it was passed, I think, in 1971 or thereabouts. And since then, we've had 10 amendments. Some of those amendments are no longer in effect, but 10 amendments, and now we are offering this 11th amendment. So the ordinance stays in place, but it is going to be amended by the terms of this new ordinance amendment that we prepared. Now, a lot of this ordinance has, I don't want to say been left dormant, but it hasn't really been reviewed on a comprehensive basis. We've added some things here and there. We've changed some dollar amounts here and there over the years. But this was a comprehensive review of the ordinance, and what we are doing is we are removing the township charging for the privilege charges, the debt service, the connection fees. At all times, the South County Water System has controlled the charges for user charges, and they have controlled the inspection fees. But the other charges, the charges to allow the connection and the privilege of allowing the connection and the debt service component, those have been charges by the township, and they go back to a time when this township signed a contract with the county and the other municipalities, LaSalle, Luna Pier, and Erie, to agree that each would pay their proportionate share based on users of the system. And in the beginning, I believe the township had to draw on its own resources, its own general fund, to pay some of these charges under contract. And even millages, I think, may have been passed back then. But ratcheting up to where we are right now, the time now is, and the system is such a strong system financially that the system takes care of itself. The township is never being asked to give its general fund monies or to pass millages to help run the system, because the system runs itself on the user charges that the system comes up with. And that does include even debt service. Debt service is a component of those user charges. And like I said, the system is so strong financially that none of the units of government, even though the contracts are still in place, none of these units of government ever have to draw on their own resources, because the system, like I said, runs itself. So the time is now, I think, to eliminate these charges. We don't really need to charge them anymore. And furthermore, we're at a time now where the South County Water System is going to start charging their own connection charges, possibly using a component of debt service and a privilege charge. So we need, I think now is the time to eliminate ours. I've taken this by the bond attorney for the township. He is in full agreement and believes, because he is the one that looks to make sure the system is a proper charging system so that he can give opinions on bonding when bonding is necessary to improve the system, when and if that ever happens. So I'm asking you to adopt the ordinance. It's ordinance 27A11. It will do what I said, and I would also add this. I should have said this before. A provision is still, I left a provision in, or inserted a provision, which allows the township to bring charges back if there would ever be a need where the system couldn't sustain itself. I couldn't imagine that ever happening, but the township has the right, because it is under contract, to meet its obligations. So if that would ever be necessary, we could bring the charges back. And also, one or two of the units, the consortium units, one of them doesn't even have a water ordinance. And I think it is important to continue the water ordinance, even though all the charging is being done through the South County Water System, because it is our ordinance that allows for unpaid charges to be placed as a lien and added to the taxes. And so if we did not have the ordinance, I do not think there would be a way to accomplish that. And this is all part of the running of the system. So I think this ordinance is needed, and I would ask you to approve it. Thank you.
Questions, Ms. Stinneberry?
When you're saying township, are you talking about the board as the township, or are you talking about each individual water user? I mean, I'm not sure what the purpose of this. I understand what you said about the charges and the water supply can run itself and all that. So what you're saying is there's plenty of money in the bank account to take care of whatever finances are necessary, so we don't have to charge. But
well, there's plenty of money generated by the user charges, and the user charges are put in place by the South County Water System. Those user charges, coupled with the money that the South County Water System already has in their funds, that more than covers the necessary charges that are needed to run this system. That's why.
okay, I get that, but has this changed? South County Water used to be Erie, LaSalle, Luna Pier, or maybe not LaSalle, I don't know.
No, that's right. Those are the components. Bedford, Luna Pier, Erie, and LaSalle. So one's a city and 3 townships.
Got that. I mean, so is that still the South
Oh,
County
yeah,
Water
the
System?
consortium is still,
Okay, so why is Bedford doing this when the other ones aren't? What do they
well,
do?
because Bedford has been charging these fees,
To what, each?
through its ordinance. So
each-
whenever anybody would come,
Each person that signs up to be, like I'm a user, so
new house, you
I'm
come
paying-
in, you want to connect, you would have to come in, make the arrangement with South County Water. You would also have
Okay.
to come into the township
Yeah.
and pay these debt service connection privilege
Okay.
charges.
Okay, I don't mean to cut you off, Tom, but
No,
you
cut
know,
off-
that's what
cut
I
off
always
at-
do.
at
so-
will.
We've been through this for many, many years. Okay, so now as a user, my bill's gonna go down?
No,
Okay,
because, but if you would
But-
go build a new house and it wasn't connected, and you now wanted to connect it, you would no longer pay those connection charges to the township.
okay. Not real happy about that. If I had to pay, they should pay, but, okay, got that.
But they are
you're
going to
s-
start
but-
paying through the South County Water System.
Right, that's what you're saying. Now South County Water's gonna start charging? Why
Yeah.
the switch? Why can't we just keep it and South County Water doesn't?
Well, it's just that,
Who made that determination?
South County.
well,
South County is us.
yeah, well, we're part of South County,
So
and
is there a
so-
vote someplace that I can look at that the whole South County Board voted to let, who, the drain commissioner, is that it?
South County Water doesn't have any control over what this board does with its own ordinance, okay? But this is something that the drain commissioner has been asking for quite some time. Because the funds come in, but they never help the water system, you know? They're used, the money that's here has been helping with the special assessments, which is good. Maybe there's some extensions that are going to be used for it. But generally, the system is running itself. And so you have, you know, every charge by a government has to be justified.
Sure.
You know, and these are charges that I do not feel are any more justified, if you know what I mean.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, you're saying we have money for the system to run itself.
The South County
So-
Water System does.
So, yeah, the South County Water System. So then why are we letting the Drain Commission start making charges?
The Drain Commissioner is the agent for the South County
I
Water System.
get that, but it doesn't give him the right to make decisions for everybody in South County Water, all the
Well-
communities.
Well, in fact, he is the agent for the system, and he does have those rights. And he will run it by the South County Water System and the board, the South County Water Board, excuse me. In fact, he may have already done that.
It sounds like the South County Water Board is impotent, it has no powers.
The South County Water Board is an advisory board to the county agency, okay? But they do have the power under the contracts to set the fees, to set the charges.
Okay, then could you explain one other thing? It's in the section D of 16. I'll give you a minute to,
Okay. Now, I'm not trying to avoid my responsibility to answer the question, but I will just say, none of this language is new. This language was imposed upon the township by the drain commissioner many years ago to stop cross-connecting, which was a problem in some of the communities. And I'm not so sure I can explain it on an engineering
Okay.
basis, but this isn't anything I've changed. This is not new. This is the same. But it's a safety and an environmental protection. That's why that is in there.
okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Just so you know, Nancy, the fees from the South County Water will be a lot less than what we actually have been charging.
Well, that's for the new people.
For the
Do I get some money back?
No.
Okay.
And to what Tom has said, I mean, I think, how long have we been collecting this tap-in fee?
Pardon?
How long have we been collecting this tap-in
I think
fee?
since 1971.
Yeah.
And how many times have we used the money,
Well,
other than?
I can't say back in the beginning, I think the money was used because we were under contract and we couldn't, the system couldn't pay its own way. So the townships and the city had to add, and we did pay, but not for many
I mean,
years.
I think the
Not
first
for many
time this
years.
board, or not this board, but in a long time was, the expansion underneath the tracks for future expansion.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
2 months ago.
yep. And I
So I
know
think
the-
that's part of the problem, is we have money sitting there not being used.
Yeah, and the money is used to help with the special assessments, okay? And so there is some benefit that way. And we're not taking the money away that we have, okay? I mean, I'm sure that everybody understands that. We're only talking about future charging where we're going to stop this charging that is it's really unnecessary.
And when Tom has mentioned now that the money is used for special assessments, it's not to pay for special assessments. It's to loan the money to the residents that are paying it back with interest.
Yeah, in effect, it's instead of making residents pay into a piggy bank and wait 15 years to put in the improvement. It's a way for the improvement to be made up front and the piggy bank replenished.
Well, they don't pay the bond payment, right? They're the bonding agent, they save some
They
$40,000
say
or something.
$40,000, and then banks, I can hardly get a bank now to fund a special assessment district. So I've been using this money to fund these special assessment districts, and then they pay it back with a small amount of interest, less than a bank would charge.
So, okay.
All right,
Somebody like to make a motion?
I would.
Mr. Francis?
I move that we accept and approve the proposed amendment to the water supply system, ordinance number 27A-11, as presented.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Mont. Try. Discussion?
This is something we've talked about for a long time. Tom's been working on it for many months, and we finally got the ordinance to reflect what current practice is in a lot of areas. And that's important. And if we would just stop collecting those fees, we'd be violating our own ordinance, which we don't want to do. So we needed to make the ordinance change to what the plan is.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner? Aye. Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Prony?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8D, request for approval of various road improvement contracts with the Monroe County Road Commission. There'll be 11 different items here. I just want to quickly say, myself and Paul and the Manick and Smith Group have been working for months. Well, typically we work pretty much year-round on it. But I want the residents to know that we have this asset management plan in place and we continue to use it. You know, I see some comments out there, you know, who's making these decisions. It goes off of a rating. The roads get rated in the shape that they're in. Local and primary roads. The road commission has a 5-year plan now for primary road system, and we have one for the local system. So, you know, the roads that we're doing, the big projects, Crab Road, you know, the 2-mile stretch in between Erie all the way to Rauch, and then Douglas Road, the mile stretch there from Samaria to Rauch, and then Whitebird Center. So, I mean, these are major projects, but I just wanted to let everybody know that isn't Paul and I sitting in my office picking roads. You know, we kind of go off of the whole rating system that this board approves, so. Mr. Francis?
Well, and that's due to the forethought that Manick and Smith put in when they helped us develop that 5-year plan. This is something that, until that was established, we never had that here. We fixed roads as they fell apart. Some years were terrible, and others we didn't spend a lot of money. And some of the roads haven't been properly fixed in 40 years or more. This kind of a plan at least plans 5 years in advance, and every year we add another year onto it. So we're always looking at 5 years in the future based on the engineering study on which roads need to be fixed first and what type the fix is and the like. It's not a political thing at all. In fact, using an expert to tell us what needs to be done takes the politics right out of it, or at least that was the intention when we first developed that plan, and it's working fine. And I really hope that township boards in the future here continue with that kind of a planning, because if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. This at least gives you some logical method of repairing the roads. Now, we can't do them all at once. We could if we wanted to bond for it and sock ourselves into large payments over the next few years. We talked about that, but we have not done that, and at this point, I don't think we are thinking of doing that unless something drastic happens with a lot of roads at the same time. So I'll get off my soapbox and go through this. You have a packet that has 11 projects in it. The first 10 are the ones we're talking about on this agenda item. The 11th one is a separate item on the agenda tonight. So with your permission, I'll just highlight what they are. We need to vote on each contract separately. They're all contracts that are provided by the Road Commission in the standard form that we've all seen for years, splitting out who pays what. So the first one is Crab Road from Temperance to Erie. It's a single chip seal. It's 1 mile long. The total cost of the project is $23,552, and it's split 50-50 between the township and the Road Commission. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Second.
Can you
Motion
state
support.
Can you state the amount?
Oh, I did. The total contract is $23,552, and our share is half of that, or $11,776, and the Road Commission pays the same amount.
Okay, motion and it's supported by Ms. Hershberger. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hershberger votes aye. Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
None of us like chip seals, but they are a relatively inexpensive way of getting some more life to our road surface before you have to do a full depth reclamation or completely grind up the road and make a new road. This will give us a few more years of life until we need to do that. That's the only benefit of the chip seal that I can see. It's something to try to keep the water from going down into the cracks. It seals it off, in theory, so that the water doesn't get down, because when it's a thaw, freeze, thaw, freeze, thaw, freeze, like we have here, it cracks the roads, the water gets in, it breaks it up, then you got a pothole, and if you don't repair that, it's bigger and it almost grows overnight. So let's go on. The second item is Crab Road from Erie to Samaria, 1 mile in length. It's a trenching of it, base stabilization. It is 1 3/4 inch plus 1.5 inch of hot mix asphalt resurfacing. The total contract cost is $378,690. The township share of that is $337,034. The Road Commission share is $41,656. I move that we approve the contract in that amount as presented.
Second.
Motion is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Hershberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Okay, the number 3 is Crab Road again, from Samaria to Rauch. That's .99 miles in length. It's a trenching which widens it. Trenching is a trench along each side to widen the road a little bit. Base stabilization and 2 1/4 inch hot mixed asphalt resurfacing on top. The total contract is $320,648, and it's 100% paid by the Road Commission.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
what's the difference in that one where we have to pay 0 on that one?
Paul, I'm not so sure that's correct on that.
Because I see another one later on
That's
that
100, this.
that we're 100%.
This project we're 100% on this project. Ms. Tinneberry?
Oh, we are 100%?
We're 100% on this project, I think, Paul.
No, there's another one we're 100% on after that, for 6.
No,
Well, let
we're
me-
not. This one
Yeah,
isn't that. This one is 100% Road Commission.
Paul?
Yes. Wrong Paul.
The road, no, either one. The Road Commission receives state money every year. Is this the state money that's allocated to Bedford going for this project? Because,
Through Act 51, yes. We've blended it all into these various projects.
oh, well, sometimes they
It's all
put it all
used up.
towards one project. So
Well-
that's why I thought it could be that. I don't know. I'm just guessing because the Road Commission does pay 100% on projects when it falls within that Act 51 money.
Correct.
Yeah, the only reason I ask because we see another one down, 2 more down, that we pay 100% and the county's 0.
Well, we're approving the project, so can we just move forward and approve
Yeah.
the project?
Was there a second to the motion?
No.
I'll
Thought you
second.
did.
Okay,
Who
motion
did?
is supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Number 4 is Dean Road from Lewis to Crab. It's a single chip seal, .99 miles. The total contract cost is $24,202, split 50/50 between the township and the road commission. Our share is $12,101. And I move that we accept and approve the contract as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion is supported. Mr. Steiner, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Okay, the 5th one is Dean Road from Monroe to Secor, .24 miles, and it's a single chip seal. The total for that contract is $7,232, split 50/50. Our share is $3,616, and the road commission has the same amount. So I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
The next one, number 6, is Douglas Road from Samaria to Rauch. That's 1.03 miles. It's in effect, a complete rebuild. It's trenching to make it a little wider, base stabilization, 2.25-inch hot mix asphalt for surfacing. It's a large amount, and it's 100% township. Total contract amount is $352,809, with the township paying 100% of that. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported. Mr. Clemens, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Number 7 is Erie Road from Summerfield to the West Township line. It's .11 miles, a short piece, and that is hot mix asphalt, 1 3/4 inch, plus another layer of 1 3/4 inch. The total on that contract is $27,740, and it's split 50/50 between the township and the road commission. Our share is $13,870. I move that we approve the contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Number 8 is Monroe Road from Summerfield to Secor. It's .34 miles. It is a chip seal. The total contract amount is $9,056, split 50/50 between the road commission and the township, our share being $4,528. I move that we accept that contract, approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported. Mr. Clemens, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Okay, number 9 is the mowing contract for local roads. We have a contract for those kinds of mowing every year. This year, it's the same amount as it was last year. It's 3 cuttings. In the spring, they do from the road to the center of the ditch. In the summer, they do the back half, and in the fall, they do both. So there's 3 mowings. The total cost is $23,600, of which the township pays 100%. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported. From Mr. Clemens, discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
And the last one is dust control, or calcium chloride. There was some debate, do we want to spend $39,500 on dust control? And we came to the decision that we would recommend that we do that as a safety measure. Sometimes it's, on gravel roads, it doesn't take a lot to make it very dusty. You can't see, you can't breathe. This helps reduce that. So the total contract for that is $39,500. There are 2 applications, one in June and one just after Labor Day. $39,500, 100% paid by the township. I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Go ahead.
Motion and supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion?
I have discussion. Doesn't say how many miles.
That's what I was just,
It's estimated 57,
TC has a question.
no, that's just what I was looking for.
it's estimated 57.5
Gallon.
by 2,000 gallons a mile. So probably like a little less than what, like 30?
Wait, what do you see? Where's the,
So-
23,
Yeah, so 23.
Total divided by the 2,000.
no, I don't know. Did they say how many miles?
Yes.
I didn't
No,
realize
not
we
how
had-
many miles. It's on the contract. It's the last page, the front part of the last page. It's
Yeah, I'm
right-
reading that, but it doesn't say how many miles. I didn't realize we had that many miles of dirt road.
Subdivisions.
Subdivisions are not. What?
You got
I'm in a
subdivisions.
subdivision. I don't have
You
a,
have subdivisions that are dirt roads. That whole corner at Douglas and Stearns, that's all dirt roads. You got a few, quite a bit just in there. I mean, then,
could you look up and see how many miles of dirt roads we have? I'll vote for this, but I'd just like to know how many miles of dirt roads is still in Bedford, because I realize we can't do a subdivision because everybody else has to do an SAD, but
no, we are
Just
doing the
like-
subdivisions. This is part of the subdivisions.
no, paving.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If there are other dirt roads besides the subdivision that you're speaking of, I'd like to know how many miles of dirt roads we have. If they made this calculation, they should know how many miles they calculated.
Oh, they do.
Well, let's see it. Thanks. You can email that to me if you don't want to wait till the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, if I use Craig's math, that's 38.5 miles.
It sounds a lot to me. Okay, I call the question.
Okay. Did we have a support to that motion?
Yep, Nancy.
It's
Okay.
really half of that because this is 2 applications.
That's true.
Oh, there you go. CPA gets come through every time. I love it.
Okay.
Math.
Just call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0.
Hang on to this list. We'll be coming back to it in an item number, where is it?
No,
It's all listed
it's all
under D.
listed at 1.
Oh, it is all in one.
Address
Yes.
it the same, though?
It is all one. Beg your pardon. Let's go on to number 11 is a contract. It's a little complicated. This is the TAP grant that we received for downtown Temperance. It's Lewis Avenue, 0.59 miles from, roughly from Ivor Lindsay to Howard Street. The total contract cost is $471,167. $256,380 of that amount is paid by the TAP grant that we've received. $32,000 of that is for design engineering that we already had a separate contract for and have already paid for. So that leaves $180,000 $787 yet to go, and that is split $166,600 as the township share, and the road commission share is $14,187. I guess I move that we approve that contract as presented.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Tinderberry.
The 45,000 construction engineering, I'm not sure, I get that's Manick and Smith.
Yes.
But what's the MCRC oversight? I mean, if they can't do the engineering, why are we paying for engineering, engineers that the road commission uses, and then they have to oversee it? Was that, what?
There is so much oversight and engineering involved in these MDOT projects with these TAP grants. It's
Yeah,
the documentation and
they're not redoing the engineering, they're just overseeing that everything's been done because they own the roads.
So they're just
Now,
getting
in the
the cut.
past,
And it's part of-
in
it's
the
part of-
past, we've paid double engineering.
It's
Where
part
they'd
of-
engineer it and we engineer it, and we figured that out a while back and said, hey, let's one or the other, not both.
it's part of the MDOT requirement
Yeah,
when you accept the TAP grant.
Is that in writing?
is in the grant, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Tom? It's every meeting, every meeting thing. Call the roll, please.
Sounds like a lawyer. Is that in writing?
Yeah, there you go.
I like that.
I learned from the best.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinderberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, moving on. Okay, 8E, request for approval of proposed police memorial at the Bedford Township Government Center. We accepted $4,000 back, I don't know, probably what, 6-7 months ago, something like that. And $3,000 of it was designated for the sidewalk project from the junior high to the library, which is actually being worked on right now. And then $1,000 of it was designated for a police memorial. Mr. Clemens and I have been working on this together with Damon, Cecil, and Al, and Tom Pollock, and Rusty Wilkie from the Park Board come up with a pretty cool design. I think that's in your guys' packet, pro bono, so thank you. And you know, this project's, we're not exactly sure how much it's gonna cost yet, but I do know the $1,000 is all we're gonna ask for from the township, you know. But it's gonna turn out to be a really neat project. It's gonna spruce up that whole corner. You know, we thought, you know, we would do where the pink is some sort of a matching the Veterans Memorial at the opposite corner in the rock. And then where the star is, we would have some sort of a stamped colored concrete. Put new bushes through there, you know, so it'll really spruce up that area. But we're gonna seek some donations, you know, to cover some of the costs, hopefully get some stuff donated. I know when we did the Veterans Memorial, we pretty much got the whole thing donated, other than I don't know, some minor things. But any questions for me or Mr. Clemens? Ms. Tinderberry?
I'd just like to read the minutes from that meeting that you were speaking of.
Okay.
I wasn't there at that meeting, and that's why I called you. I was not familiar with what all this was. It says request to accept a donation from ITC for $3,500. Has that gone up? Oh, I'll just read it out. Brony explained that the ITC is the electricity transmission company, which is replacing the wooden poles throughout the community with single monopoles, and they offer money for community use. He would like the board to accept the donation of $3,000, said $3,500 in the beginning, but now it's $3,000, to purchase concrete to build a sidewalk from the junior high to the library, and use $500 for a police monument at the township hall. He hopes to get labor donated to complete these projects. Francis suggested the board start with the sidewalk project since it is a safety issue and see if there is any excess funds afterwards before moving on the police monument. Motion was made by Francis, seconded by Clements, to gratefully accept the donation of $3,500, back to that number, from ITC Corporation and thank them for it. Motion carried on a roll call vote as follows, blah, blah, blah. So the gratefully accept the donation. Where's that? Oh, Francis suggested the board start with the sidewalk project and see if there's any excess funds afterwards before moving on to the police monument. So I don't see a motion there to move forward with the police monument. Is that what we're doing here tonight? Deciding whether or not we're going to have a police monument?
But that's why it's on the agenda. I mean, it was, you know, to give information, and if there's objection to it, I do know this, that the local cement union in Toledo is going to be donating all the work. I've already got concrete priced out for the project, and the school's going to be covering the extra cost. So we're going to have roughly $300 left over. So that's kind of where I got the 1,000, but I thought it was 1,000. It is 500. You are right. So, but it's all we're going to ask for from the township for the project.
So there's no other, I mean, I'm just questioning it because we don't have police. We're having a police monument, but we don't have police.
Well, it's
They're
for the
county
whole,
police.
it's for the whole, you know, state. I mean, the state police, it's just a monument to, you know, recognize who served. And I believe, TC, we're
Yeah,
doing
in the
something
township, it
following
was
them.
suggested that we have a fire, we have military, we don't have anything for anyone who served. I think it would have been better had we used law enforcement memorial as opposed to police, because you're right, there was a very small window in which Bedford had a police department. But the monument, the memorial is for all police who have served at all levels, so state police, county sheriff, and municipal as well.
So everyone who's served and lost their life, or everyone who has served like Logan served? So it's,
Everyone who has served, and at this point in time, the conversation has been is that the only those who actually lost their life in the line of service would actually be memorialized on the memorial itself. Other than that, it would be a generalized memorial to those who have served.
okay, well, that's a different story. I agree with that. So the ones who've lost their life in the line of service in Monroe County, or what's the jurisdiction of this?
My understanding is Bedford at this point, and there's research being done to determine with absolute certainty that number, names, et cetera.
Oh.
That's clearly one you don't want to get wrong.
Exactly. In both the, in all law enforcement, state,
Yes.
sheriff, okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, I was just wanted to,
No, that's good. Thank you.
thank
They
you.
would have told me that when I went to the clerk's office to request the money, that there's only 500
Yeah.
for it. So.
That's good. I'm glad the clerk keeps you in line. That's good.
Oh, she does. She's good.
Takes a staff of at least 20.
I believe that. Thank you.
Okay, so
Do we have any idea how much the sidewalk issue over there is going to cost?
about 2,700 for the concrete. It's being poured and formed up for free, which I'll let you guys know. I think their local's at $886, the cement masons in Toledo, Ohio. And as far as the removal of the dirt, you know, that's gonna cost roughly $600 to $800, and the school's gonna cover that cost. And, I mean, that's
Great,
pretty much
great.
it, you know what I mean? Our maintenance guys are gonna go back out there after the fact and smooth out dirt around the edges, so we don't have, you know, a bad edge, but, you know, that's about the cost. So, which is really cheap, because it's probably about a $15,000 project, easily. 415 feet of concrete, 6 feet wide, so.
Are these people
And I-
bonded?
Huh?
Are they bonded, insured? Are they, these,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, they're not just doing it cheaper because they have some time in their hands, but they're doing it through their,
It's an apprenticeship program.
okay.
You know, this is a big deal. I was going down Jackman Road the other day, and I was behind a whole class of kids walking down Jackman Road to avoid going through the muck. And then, I mean, all this came about when the principal at the school called, and, you know, because I don't want to name any names, a kid in a wheelchair was going down Jackman Road to get to the library from the school. So this is a big deal,
All right.
you know, so, but yeah, I mean, as far as funding, the 3,000 will cover it plenty. And if it doesn't, TC will kick in a few bucks.
That's what I thought. Okay, good.
Oh,
Could I
thank you.
make sure that's in the minutes?
What's that?
Oh, you didn't hear that?
No.
Oh, I said if it doesn't cover it, TC will kick in a little bit.
Oh, is that what we're doing? Okay.
I look for a motion to move forward.
Well, that's a lot of discussion about the sidewalk. So you're saying we got like $800. What's the estimate for this?
Probably quite a bit. We're gonna get it all.
So I
done
would
ready to go.
assume, okay. So what are we making?
Veterans Memorial was probably a $6,000 project we got done for free, so. We'll get some free labor. TC and I will work on that.
Yep. There's been some companies who have reached out and said they're more than happy to donate in support of area law enforcement. So we feel comfortable we can get it done with whatever money is left over from the ITC transaction. I'll go ahead and make the motion. I would make a motion that this board approve the police memorial to be continued to developed with the funds left over from the sidewalk project currently under completion to be used on this project with no additional township funds allocated or approved. All their funds would be private in nature.
Second.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
Can I ask for a friendly amendment? That it be called the Law Enforcement Memorial instead of Police? And can we also add that the committee will come back to the board with the final cost?
Sure.
Thank you. No.
Do you accept
You
that
did.
friendly amendment?
I do.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
you,
friendly.
call the roll, please.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8F, request for approval to hire the township labor attorney to draft a long-term contract for the fire chief at Massengill. I've been talking with Chief for a while. I mean, this guy truly has done an amazing job in our township with everything, bringing our team together, firefighters, upgrading equipment, service. I mean, every area I feel like we're moving in a forward direction with. And we need continuity as a township, I feel, to know that we're gonna have our fire chief, for the long haul. And he does too. So I feel like this position in particularly is separate from, I feel like, a lot of positions within the township. We need a longer-term contract than an at-will employee here. We've spent a lot of money to find them, and I personally want to keep them. So I think we need to approve and move forward to let our labor attorney draft something up. So, any questions? Ms. Tinderberry?
Does he want it?
Chief, come on up. I knew she was going to do this.
Oh, my goodness, we have to cover all bases. I mean, you can
asked
talk
ahead of
privately
time.
in your office, but I want to know if he's had his arm twisted or offered some special deal, or I just need to know the
You
whole.
taking those notes? Take those notes.
Good evening. No arm twisting or special needs, ma'am. I'm completely comfortable with it. While I don't have any intents to leave, I think we've got a lot of good things going, and I'd really like to be around long enough to see a lot of this stuff through that we've started in the last couple of years, so.
Is it a lifetime contract?
Oh, yeah, well, let's, I guess, we'll work on that in the negotiation
Okay.
process. How's that?
I just want to make sure you were on board.
Yeah,
Mr. Steiner?
I'm completely fine.
I reiterate your comments, Mr. Peroni, and I've said all along about how this chief has not done all this work and claimed it all upon himself. He's continually praising the employees that he has working for him and done a wonderful job. I'd hate to see this man go in a year or two. I'd like to see him around for quite some time. So if nobody has an objection, I'm going to make a motion to approve to hire the township labor attorney to work on a long-term contract for the chief. And if there's more discussion, we can have a second and discuss more.
Support.
Motion is supported by Mr. Clements. Discussion? Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Item 8G, discussion on a code of conduct policy.
I'll take this from Mr. Peroni. I asked for this to be put on the agenda. We've had some recent events that took place back in February in the township. There was a person that was involved in an accident, and there's a ton of social media that's been surrounding this issue. The person happens to sit on the downtown development for, Lewis Avenue redevelopment. I'm not saying that anybody should be removed from this particular committee at this time, but when we do have a Bedford mission statement that partially reads that the employees of the township would operate with ethical standards required of public officials and public employees. And as far as I'm concerned, anyone that serves on a board or a committee or a commission with this township also should be held to those same standards. Unfortunately, we don't have a policy in place that technically governs the actual conduct. I will volunteer to get started, and anybody that wants to provide any additional input, I think we should have something in place. And the incident in question, the county is going through this as well, and we'll wait to see what the end result is. And we need to get a policy in place to be able to address the issue going forward based on the results from the county, and it's gone through the law enforcement agencies.
Ms. Tinnevery?
I'd like to ask the attorney what, I know you're not a labor attorney, but you've been around county government for more years than I'd like to remember. But is this actually legal? I mean, can we write up a code of conduct that impacts what might happen to me if I did something? Or, I mean, I'm not sure
Well,
if it's legal.
well, I mean, to answer that question, I guess I would say that it's legal to put forth some sort of conduct code. The only thing is, it is difficult to, I mean, like, what's the enforcement? We can't remove any elected official. We could only remove an appointed person after a due process hearing of some kind. You can't just do it without their having a defense. So there's that. And so even if you were going to, like, have some code and say we're going to censure somebody or something, they still have a right to defend themselves and a right to have a, like a hearing, and so on and so forth. So I'm not against it. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm saying it's legal. I'm just saying it is somewhat, it's problematic.
When I say the word legal, though, I mean, is it in the purview of what a general law township board is given to do in the Township Zoning Act, which, oversees our abilities?
Well, the township's governed by the statute, of course, and, I'll be honest, I don't know of many units of government in the county of Monroe that have adopted a code like this, okay? And like I said, it is problematic in that what is to be done when you want to enforce it against somebody. No, I think it's legal to have a code.
So are we saying we'll do like background checks before we appoint somebody?
It's based on actions of conduct is how we
Yeah, but
would
if
write a
somebody
policy.
committed a crime 2 months before we appointed them, I mean, we're gonna accept, I mean, I don't, how would you?
I'm saying that if you were appointed to any kind of committee by this or any other subsequent board, that the policy would then allow that board to take action if someone violated the code of conduct during that tenure while they were appointed.
But my point is, okay, somebody gets convicted of a crime 4 months before we appoint them. What's the difference? Is it, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that,
Because they're representing the township, is that what
Well,
you're saying? They're sitting on a
then you
board?
probably wouldn't appoint them.
Well, you
that-
don't know, I mean, sometimes there's things that happen you just don't know about.
well, but then you would vet that person and that particular issue.
I'm
and-
saying, how would you do that, though? We do background checks on people we appoint?
Well,
Is that what you're suggesting? I'm just saying
Pe-
it's,
People, I mean, if you're going to appoint somebody that, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us that would discuss with anybody appointed to these boards. And ask if they have any, prior issues that would prevent them from conducting themselves with, ethical standards of the township.
Ms. Stinneray?
Well, can I ask Rick a question? Who would you have draw this code of conduct policy? I mean, we're not going to sit here and decide
No,
what should be.
like I said, I will do some research on it. I will also do some looking through MTA for guidance,
I would call MTA, too.
and then go from there and see if it's worth bringing back to the board.
I don't mind as long as, I mean, I'd have to make my decision based on what's in the code of conduct policy, I guess.
Mr. Francis?
I don't think we ought to be working on this to aim at any one specific person. We have a lot of boards and committees that are appointed by this body here. And this body does appoint. Nowhere in what we could find says that they can unappoint them for whatever reason. Might be they can't make any of the meetings, or they moved out of the township. Different things like that. Not necessarily just an act that somebody may or may not have committed. So this shouldn't be specific toward any one person. It ought to cover everything, so that it gives this board the opportunity to also unappoint someone that they appointed.
Well, again, I mean, it's subject to what if someone is appointed to a board or commission or committee that they had an illegal use of a firearm, or a drunken driving issue, or domestic violence issue where they were definitely found guilty for that type of incident, then that would be part of the way the policy should be. Is you can't just say because we think. It would have to be proven that they were guilty of some kind of specific issue or crime or whatever took place, whatever the accusation would be.
Mr. Montran?
Just because this was, like just how it was worded in the outline, is that what that's for then, Rick? Is like for just like appointed boards? That's what I didn't even know what, it was very broad of what the code of conduct, is that what it would be for? Is for?
And that's why I left it sort of broad, because I didn't want to try to go into a lot of detail and have a lot of assumptions. I want to be able to come here and say exactly what I was looking at. And yes, this would be, again, like Paul actually said it very clearly, anyone that we actually appoint, we don't have a mechanism in place today to unappoint for whatever reason. So that's sort of what this direction would be, is to give us that capability that, and we'd have to outline what reasons would be. I mean, it could be that, what if somebody's appointed to a board or a commission that meets every month and they showed up to one meeting for the year? Well, we don't have something written
There's
in the
something
contract.
in place about showing up to meetings.
Well, it says that, but how does it actually say how you unappoint them?
Well, I mean, that's a reason for somebody to be removed from their seat, is if they're not showing up for meetings. Have we ever had an issue in the past on one of these boards because of an individual or something they've done or something, you know what I mean? Has it affected the board? Has it affected the way they served? You know what I'm saying? In all of it, Nancy, do you remember, I mean, hasn't it, because of somebody doing something, has it affected them serving? Has there ever,
Tom would remember better than me, but we had a supervisor once that was, liked to tip the sauce, and, because came to
what's
meetings.
tipping the sauce?
Like like hot
Having
sauce-
multiple adult beverages.
hot sauce and
They
stuff.
like Mexican food, did they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and like Tom said, there wasn't anything we could do because he was elected. You can't, I mean, the taxpayers would have to recall him or something. So we have had people in the past that had, I might say, habits that were different than my habits, but nothing was ever done.
I just think looking at it, I think it's going to be a difficult situation
I think it's
for
gonna be
us,
difficult.
you know, to manage, to write up, and what, you know, what are the parameters? I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing to write up, Mr. Francis.
That's probably why not many have ever done this.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
how do
so
you
hard to
control it?
write. And I think, frankly, it ought to apply to all the board members also. Even though they cannot be removed by this board, you can at least censure them if
That's
need
correct.
be. It gives you a mechanism to at least express the board's feeling on that particular person at that time.
Yeah, I think removing somebody for not attending, I think that is an
That's a good reason.
fairly easy thing to deal with. You miss 3 unexcused absences or something, then, you know, you can remove somebody you've appointed. But if you appoint somebody, and that appointment, let's say, is for a 1-year, 2-year, let's say a 3-year appointment, you know, to get rid of them, I mean, they have a vested right in that appointment. You can't just get rid of them without letting them have some defense, some way of defending themselves. Do you follow what I'm saying? It's a vested right.
Well, and that's
when
what I
you-
said, you would
when-
have
It's a
to
vested right when you appoint someone, that's
You
all
would
I'm
have
saying. So
to-
it is hard.
see what the end result is, and again, if there's any legal action involved, you wait till the legal action is done, and then
Yeah.
that would be part of your decision.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some codes of ethics around the state. I'm sure, and I think probably the Michigan Townships
but I think,
Association
though,
has something.
let's just
But
say-
it's just, it's like everybody's saying, when you think about it, it's hard, and you don't want to have a situation where a code of ethics can be used to gang up on, on a person with
Let's just
a-
say
with
somebody gets a DUI, though.
unpopular position.
You know what I mean? It's not affecting the way they serve.
Yeah.
Is it affecting the way they serve somebody getting a DUI, let's just say? Okay.
It very well could be.
But I'm saying, though, it's not, but it's not, though. Let's just say they made a mistake, they get this in trouble, it's a one-time occurrence, and now we have to go through this big process, this due process, and, you know what I'm saying? I think, Mr. Montry?
If you want to use DUI, you've got a few cops in the room that might differ on that one, but go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, though, at
I
what
know.
point do you say,
Generally, people that
is,
have
you know-
DUIs continue to have DUIs, generally.
Mr. Montry?
Yeah, to Paul's point, I told TC, when I read this on the agenda, that's what I thought it was for, like, to have some sort of, like, code of conduct or whatever for, like, this board. But what I would say is, in the spirit of moving this along, could we say that Mr. Steiner, like, request that, look into it, and then bring that back without a request to approve, and more, let's have something to look at, to discuss and amend, and,
Well,
you
the
know what I
first
mean,
thing
kind
that
of
needs to
have
be
or
done is
whatever.
the homework, though, of what are legal parameters of removing. So looking into MTA, talking to the legal department as far as that goes with MTA, we need to find out what we can and can't do before he goes and wastes a bunch of time and finds out, hey, we can't do this.
Well, I figure
that's the first
we
thing
get the
that should happen.
information we can. I don't want to pay Tom or Phil or Marty or anybody. you
Get in
know,
line with them.
But I'll
Get
give
in
you,
line.
I'll get you a Christmas present. But, you know, again, I'll just bring it back as general information. I mean, I don't have
Yeah.
to, I can just share it, send it to the board. Not going to be something that takes action and say, here's what I have found so far. And then, you know, if I feel that I've got the right information, that it's a legal policy type thing, then bring it back to the board for some kind of action at that point.
Okay. Mr. Clements?
Yeah, no, I think he's covered it. I fully support where Rick's headed.
Okay. All right, moving on. 8H, request to recognize the Green Initiatives Committee and for it to succeed the Bedford Beautification Committee in name, purpose, and fund. Come on up. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, we've, you know, mainly Mr. Pryor's been meeting with this group of wonderful people. You know, a lot of the people that had left the Beautification Committee had a desire with the greener community. So, you know, we haven't really
Don't steal my thunder, Paul.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Do you want some duct tape?
My name is Joyce Blanton. I'm at 7705 Secor Road, Lambertville, Michigan. Yes, I am a former member of the Beautification Committee in Bedford since about 1995, and did recently resign along with our other members because I think I think the committee and the timeliness and so forth of it had kind of run its course. And in particular, I would like to thank Patricia Bull, who really started to point the Beautification Committee more clearly in another direction with, if you were at last year's trade fair, you would have noticed our booth wasn't our usual lovely beautification booth, but it was littered with plastic bags and plastic things and so forth, and we gave out cloth bags to encourage recycling. And we brought in Steve Pollock last fall for a free seminar talking about the dangers of plastic in the community, which evidently I was out of town, but apparently was very well attended and very well received. So I'd like to thank Pat and Kathy Bevel as well for kind of leading us down that way. Although over the years we did a lot of things, which should be in your memo, such as educational seminars, composting lessons, tire recycling, roadside cleanups, township update articles, you know, all tending toward conservation and sustainability. Now I've gone off script, so I'm not sure where I am here right now. But anyway, I do represent the following individuals: Pat Bull, Kathy Bevel, Diane Smith, Dan Rock, Kenneth Schumacher, and Al Pryor in this request. Al did contact us, I think, as the result of Pat's effort toward eliminating plastics in the environment, to see what could be done by a group, whether a committee or a 501c3 or whatever, to help the township fulfill its mission within the master plan to promote conservation and sustainability. So actually, several of us, Pat said she wanted several other people involved, and plus we have now attracted a couple other people, including Dan Brock, who is with the Monroe County Health Department, and he is the one in charge of all the recycling and conservation efforts up throughout Monroe County, and we're very happy to have him. He's very excited and enthused about this green initiatives here in Bedford Township. Anyway, we are here to seek a change in the name of the Beautification Committee. So it's not a new committee per se, but we're talking about a sort of a redesigned or remorphed committee into the Green Initiatives Committee. And we would change the name, the mission, and the funding as so far allocated in any budget that the township has for the Beautification Committee. So you know, our mission is to promote conservation and sustainability in Bedford Township in order to assure a clean and healthy environment for future generations. Short and sweet, I hope, and easily understood. Our vision and our motto is building a greener tomorrow today. Our initial strategy is to educate and encourage our residents to reduce, reuse, and at the last effort, recycle. Because as Dan Rock has pointed out, if we only recycle, we're trying to clean up basically mountains of stuff with a whisk broom. So, and this applies most critically to our use of plastics, which if you've been reading the news or seen any programs recently, you know that plastics is everywhere and it doesn't go away in the environment. And now autopsies are finding that I think an autopsy just revealed that they talked about that it was like half a cup of plastics in this person's system. So it's everywhere. It's not just the fish, it's the fish we eat and so forth. It's getting into our systems. We also recognize the need to encourage sustainable practices in the natural environment and to discourage plant species, invasive plant species, and restoring clean water and air. The aforementioned individuals have all completed applications for this committee. And I think we're set to go as long as you're willing to approve us as the redesigned Beautification Committee as the Green Initiatives Committee.
I just like to note, too, this is part of our master plan as well, so.
Well, yes, this was brought forth actually in the first meeting with Al Pryor and the three of us who attended the first meeting, myself, Pat Bull, and Kathy Bevel. And he distributed the page from the master plan that talks about creating a, conservation and sustainability in Bedford Township. So it goes along with, but also assists the township in meeting those goals.
Ms. Tinderberry?
First of all, Joyce, I want to thank you and the entire Beautification Committee over the many years from the 90s. For all you've done. You have done so much more than just what you mentioned. And you've beautified the township hall, the library. You've taken care of beautiful trees down Lewis Avenue, just so many things that can't all be even named. And I appreciate your contribution to Bedford in many different ways in that area, in the Master Gardener area. So I just want to thank you. To me, an old timer, it's sad to see the Beautification Committee go. But I understand all that you're trying to do. And this question is not a silly, funny question, but is this in any connection to the Green New Deal?
The Green New Deal.
That has been on the news forever and ever, where they're getting
I'll
rid of...
answer it, no.
You're not on the committee.
I've been to their
I want to know
meetings.
from...
I know.
Excuse me. They're getting rid of cows and oil and gasoline, all crude, all... Is this just... Because conservation and sustainability mean different things to different people. So I'm interested in knowing, and I have had emails asking me when this came on the agenda, if this is in any connection to the Green New Deal that has been discussed in many different ways.
No, and we're certainly in no position that, we have some wonderful people on the committee, but we're certainly in no position to move in that direction. As I said, I kind of enumerated where we're going, and it really has to do mostly with education. And we're talking about from the schools and whatever on up, to educate people about reuse, reduce, recycle. And also, since I'm a master gardener, I have a big thing, certainly personally, as do some other committee members, in reducing invasive species and within the township, which is a problem. Actually, we've tried to work on that, but we're going to put more effort into it and trying to get rid of some of the Phragmites, the tall reed grass, which is a terrible, terrible invasive species at the high school and other places. So, that's really where we're going.
Educating through our update, that is
Through
in
the
paper.
update, and as you know, I've written the articles for years for the Beautification Committee, and I've always kind of stressed sustainability in gardening and landscaping practices and everything, if you've seen those articles or remember. We also have the age of technology, so we have the opportunity to use Facebook and other social media to promote some of our causes. We will also be continuing with the use of seminars, bringing in experts from outside sources, or certainly we have our own Dan Brock on the committee. We're so pleased that we attracted his attention that he's willing to come down from Monroe and serve on the committee. Getting in the schools, talking with schools and so forth, businesses, whatever, in terms of, if we could convince some businesses to at least ask the waiters and waitresses to say, would you like a plastic straw, not just automatically hand it out. Some of it can be very simple, and again, we're not a huge committee. It'll be a absolute maximum limit of 9 on the committee, so we'll do as much as we can.
Well, I'm all for what you've spoken of. So I can assure our farmers that they're protected.
Oh, we
You're not
No.
going after their fertilizer and their
No,
cows
no,
and their
no, no, no.
chickens and, okay.
No, that is a discussion for much bigger committees and groups than ours.
Well, hey, a fire starts with a little match, so I'm just saying. There are people who are concerned, so I just wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
Any more comments and
guys.
questions for Joyce? Mr. Francis?
Not necessarily for Joyce, but I guess I understand that a committee appointed by this board would be subject to the Open Meetings Act, correct? And would have to have formal minutes taken and recorded somewhere, and I'm sure that Joyce
Correct.
is aware of that.
Of course.
She served, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, but the only position we're thinking of not filling, because we won't need it, because we're not looking for a lot of funding, because there shouldn't be a need for that, but relying on the township treasurer's office to, take, really, because we'll have to come to the board every time to request funding should we need it for anything. And so, having a treasurer keeping, regular, I don't think. Other than that, we will have a secretary, a chairman of the board, a vice chair.
Well, just so your group knows, we did leave, I can't remember exactly how much in the budget, wasn't it 4,700?
We haven't approved the budget.
We haven't
yet.
approved it, but there is money in there if it's approved. Paul's right on it, look at him. I think it was around 4,700 if I remember correctly, so. Okay, any more questions, or anybody have any comments, Ms. Hirschberger?
What are the terms?
Terms, 2-year terms?
I would say 2-year terms.
Okay. Are they going to be staggered, or?
Yeah, I think that's important.
So half of them 1 year and then half of them 2 years?
Well, with the starting, though, with the startup, I don't know how you handle that. The other thing is that, any appointments to the committee are subject to the committee's approval, because we only want people on the committee that are reasonably knowledgeable with the issues that we're going to be dealing with.
Subject on your guys' recommendation.
Exactly.
So you would recommend to this board, we would approve, but
Okay.
we would definitely take your recommendation into consideration for sure. Because you guys obviously know what's best for that
Absolutely,
committee.
because, it's critical that we have people on this committee that are invested in the issue and have some knowledge with regard to that.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Mr. Steiner?
I would suggest too, though, that be a good idea to stagger, put a few people at 1 year. I mean, if they want to serve long-term, they can get their term extended, but I think it's just good that you do that, because you could have everybody wiped out at one time if you stuck with everybody with a 2-year term.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm not sure how you handle the staggering, so that's
So you would
fine.
just, say if half were 1 year and half for 2 year, and then after the first year, I mean, we can extend to more,
Reappoint them.
then it would be
Yes,
2
and you
years
have
at a
to
time.
say how many we're doing.
Sounds good.
Okay, so it'll be a committee of 9. They have 8 appointed, or they have 8 they're recommending to this board to appoint right now, correct? There's 8 you're recommending to us to appoint now?
I think right now we have, help me out, somebody. I think Al Pryor, we had originally talked about him joining the board, but instead of being a part, not the board, the committee, instead of being a part of the committee, he is asked to be involved with the committee, but as a liaison with the township. So
Okay.
that would leave.
Can you come up to the mic?
Basically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
It's 8 in the
6.
package.
6 at this point.
There's
Well,
There's a couple in the package, and they're not sure if they want to be on the committee yet, because they wanted to see what was going on in terms of that. We have, so if we appoint.
so who are you
any- are
recommending
any
we
of them
appoint right
here?
now?
Right here, this 4.
Well, hold on,
Joyce.
you got Kenneth Schumacher, Diane Smith, Patricia Bull, Joyce Blanton, Dan Rock, Tracy Kachar, Tony Moran, and Jesse Green. So who are you recommending we
No, we want to start with the 5 that are right here.
okay, so Patricia
What?
Bull,
Right.
Joyce Blanton,
5 that
Dan
are right
Rock.
here, need names.
Pardon?
The 5 that are right here, you have to
Plus
have a
Dan
name.
Rock.
Yeah, he just rattled them off. Paul.
Okay, so Dan Rock, Joyce Blanton, Patricia Bull, who else? Kenneth?
Diane Smith, Ken Schumacher, Kathy Bevel, did you mention her?
No, we got
Kathy's not on this
We don't have-
list.
Kathy Bevel, yeah.
So that's your 5.
Apparently, she didn't fill out a new app because you had one for
Okay, so
her
we
that
can
was only
appoint
2 years
5
old.
tonight,
Yeah, appoint those 5.
We'll appoint 5
and we'll
tonight.
discuss the other ones.
and then we'll move forward.
Are any of the other 3 here
No.
that we have
No,
applications for?
I called them.
Dan,
And-
Dan was not able to make it. He
No,
had
not,
another,
I'm talking about the 3 that you didn't mention.
Right.
Tracy, Tony, and Jesse.
Yeah. So, which I have to call them tomorrow.
So
Okay.
we'll start with these 5, and then we can just, in part of the motion, just say that,
be
you know,
6.
2 of them,
Me, Pat, Kathy.
We don't have Kathy's application. no, I don't think.
Oh, she said there was a relatively new one on,
well, okay, tonight, we're gonna do these 5 right here. Dan,
okay,
Rock,
we'll put that
Joyce,
next
Patricia, Diane, and Kenneth to move this meeting forward.
Okay.
We'll do these 5, and then, you know, we'll work it out next meeting,
Can
okay?
I just say something real quick? Nancy, the other thing that's really important that this committee's gonna do, we don't pay enough attention to our drains around here. And like, we have Adopt a Road, we should have something like Adopt a Drain on some of these that we could get cleaned up and so on, so the Drain Commission doesn't have to try and do it all the time. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to educate people on septic systems. We have failing systems in the state of Michigan, and nobody is aware of that, because we don't require any septic system checks when people are buying and selling their homes. So that's gonna be one of the educational things that we wanna get out to people before they buy a home, and that they should be pumping their tanks, because that really hampers farmers as well, because when those things start to leach, it affects Lake Erie, it affects farmers and everybody. So I just wanted to throw
that's
that in
part of
there.
the
thought
Clean
that-
Water
Yeah,
Initiative,
so we're gonna
yeah.
be working on that.
I thought the health department took care of septics. I know
Yeah,
if you-
only when you install them.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's it. And that's a problem statewide. That just isn't here in Bedford. That's so,
Maybe we need to get our county
It's a problem
to
worldwide.
do that.
yeah. So that's something that we want to work on, in the drains too, because Adopt a Road worked really well. And we thought, yeah, we're not going to go in and clean out the big drains, but there's a lot of small drains that we could probably get to and clean them out. And I see there's Boy Scout here, so that'd be great projects for those guys too.
Yeah, I just want to mention, again, with a relatively small committee, we don't expect to do everything. However, I found in working with boards and committees over the last 30-some years that it's very important to partner with other organizations and to make other organizations, you know, aware of perhaps what could be done or what, you know, what the needs are and everything. So again, you know, look at us as an educational and catalyst, perhaps, for, you know, getting some things done in the township.
Okay.
So then what's Al's capacity?
He's just gonna be a
A
board rep,
liaison.
Liaison, he'll.
A
go to their
liaison
meetings,
with the
help out.
township board.
He's been attending all their meetings during the day, so I mean, he'll be able to keep
He's
doing
not a
that.
voting member?
No.
No.
Well, I mean, they won't really be voting on anything either. I mean, they'll just be recommending I don't know what they would.
Well, understand too, when I say partnering, this is a committee that must stay closely in tune with the needs of the township and the township board. And having a liaison with the township on our committee, I think in this particular instance, because it's so tied with the mission and the master plan in the township, I think that's very important. So I think he will be, and we're planning, he said we can use his phone number that we can put out as someone to call. You know, that's always a little bit of an issue in a township committee, putting out your personal telephone number for a committee. But, you know, someone in the township hall and not having to go through the regular system would be most helpful to people with questions. So,
Okay, so somebody want to make a motion, and in the motion, we'll just kind of break up the years
Okay.
to a turn your term.
I'll make a motion that we, I guess, do we have to disband the beautification?
If you're gonna move the budget over, you would almost have to.
You're changing the
To
name.
disband the beautification?
Changing the name.
Yeah, but you're not disbanding it, you're changing the name.
Well, but are there any members of the beautification?
No.
No, they all
No.
resigned. That's why I need to know which way I'm doing this motion.
I guess it doesn't matter, but I mean, I think.
You got to talk in your mic, Tom.
I think I would just start.
George is gonna be coming
I think
out
I would
here.
just, sorry.
Turn it on.
I think I would just, I don't know, either way you want to go, but I think I would, I mean, is there some consistency with the Beautification Committee to the new committee that's of some importance, or can we just start with a?
Yes, it is. As I pointed out, we've done things over the last 24 years that I've been on the committee that, you know, have pointed in the direction of conservation, sustainability. We've done a lot of that in addition to a lot of things that were strictly beautification. What we're really looking at here is concentrating now through the Green Initiatives Committee on those conservation and sustainabilities and setting aside, you know, the other beautification activities as something that, you know, it takes time and effort and talent.
Well, do you want the committee, the Beautification Committee disbanded and a new committee created?
Well, there is no more beautification committee at this point. So the question, you know, that's really a question for the township.
Well,
Yeah.
there is a
Well,
beautification
based on-
committee, there just isn't any.
Let's just
member.
name it beautification/green initiatives, that's what it's in the thing. Why can't that be the name?
Because we don't want it to be beautification, we want it to be Green Initiatives Committee, because we are concentrating solely on conservation and sustainability.
It says in the thing.
The only thing is, we had
We
a
have a
funding
line,
mechanism.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Just
why I'm-
rename it.
I don't know
I would think
legally
you'd
if
be
we
able to-
can. That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking him.
Well,
Let's just create a new committee, okay? The, you know, she doesn't want the
Think that'd be
beautification
cleaner.
name. Just create the new committee.
So don't worry
The
about
Green Initiatives
beautification saying
Committee.
anything.
You can say that we're disbanding the Beautification Committee.
but we don't have
Okay.
to say anything right now about it.
No, I guess not, but
I mean, if the
you
township
just don't want to
really
have it on,
Funds over you do.
Yeah.
you just don't want to have it on your budget.
The moment they have an expenditure, they need funds.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we disband the beautification committee and we create a new committee and name it the Green Initiatives Committee. Funding from the beautification committee will move over to the Green Initiatives Committee. We will place 9 members on this committee, and 5 of them currently tonight will be Kenneth Shoemaker, Diane Smith, Patricia Bull, Joyce Blanton, and Dan Rock. These 5 will be put on for 2-year terms. The next 4 we appoint will be 1-year terms so that the terms are staggered.
I'll second. That's where I was gonna go to, Trudy, is the first 5, 2-year and 1-year makes sense.
Motion is supported, discussion?
Would you accept as a friendly amendment to accept the mission and vision statement that they gave? That way it gives the
Accepted.
committee some direction.
Accepted.
Okay,
Accepted.
thank you.
Okay. Just call the roll, please.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
All right,
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Look forward to the committee. Okay, item 8I, request for approval to bid out the project to reseal and stripe the township parking lot. It's that time to where there's some areas that need attention, so we need to put this out for bid. We have multiple companies we could put it out to bid this. It's approximately a $15,000 to $20,000 project roughly to do it. There are a couple areas of it that need attention. When you pull into the parking lot, that first drain is sinking. So I'm gonna look at getting that fixed along with it. You know, and then I got our maintenance guys doing some minor concrete patchwork on the drain. As you go towards the backs, the concrete's starting to break up where the drive-through is, so. I just want approval to move forward so Trudy can put out, a bid doc, so, Miss,
Are we talking about the back and the front, the whole thing?
the whole thing.
Okay.
And I would recommend too, you know, when we're doing this, that the park board move on their lots as well. I don't know if we can make that part of this is bid out all 3 of them. You got Samaria and Car Park that desperately need the same thing, so, but we'll just focus on this one for now.
Mr. Peroni? How about you ask for individual bids for all of it, and then a combined bid for possible reduction if we did do
I
it?
already have asked for individual bids, so.
So, but a combined one.
No, I'll do that for sure. Yeah, we can actually make it part of the thing, so. Okay, I look for a motion. Ms. Stenberry?
I move that we put out for bid the resealing and striping of the township parking lot, front and back, to be, the bid to be submitted by May 15th. Well, whatever's good for Trudy, never mind.
Okay.
I'll let her
It's
decide.
it's not an hard, I mean, that's plenty of time.
I know, but she may be at a meeting that day, I don't know. Should be for her to know when she can open it.
Okay.
Could be a Saturday.
I support.
Could be. I would
Okay,
say-
motion to
With Trudy's
support
setting
and
the date.
discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Comments from the public, comments limited to 5 minutes, come on up.
Good evening again, Logan Tisdale. From January 1, 2017 until January 31st, 2019, the Monroe County Sheriff's Department logged 4,815.2 hours on patrol in Bedford Township without issuing one single traffic citation. That cost Bedford Township taxpayers $207,053.60 at the hourly rate of $43. Those hours are the equivalent of 120.38 weeks of work at 40 hours per week. That is 2.315 years. Can you imagine a police officer working Bedford Township for 120.38 weeks or 2.315 years at 40 hours per week without investigating any complaints, driving in a well-equipped patrol vehicle with a sophisticated radar system, and not issuing one single traffic citation? Betty had 2 officers, each working 40 hours per week for 60 weeks, with doing nothing except traffic policing and not finding one person violating any traffic laws. Only in Bedford Township could you imagine this scenario. Assume the miles that were traveled, the amount of gas and maintenance costs, and the cost of the taxpayer is astronomical. For what? Is that community policing? Not even close. There are no words in the English language that can describe this situation. Appalling, ludicrous, despicable, outrageous don't even begin to describe this situation. Yet I feel this board will totally overlook this situation and sing the praises of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. What is this board's foremost concern? It should be making Bedford Township the safest community in this county. That is the only acceptable answer. If so, then this situation needs to be addressed with such vigor and tenacity that the Monroe County Sheriff's Department apologizes to this board and, more importantly, to the citizens of Bedford Township for not providing the police traffic enforcement protection that this community deserves and is so expensively paid for with their hard tax-earned dollars. If the Monroe County Sheriff's Department digs its heels in and tries to justify these statistics, then this board should give them their 30-day notice of termination of the contract and look to form their own police department that will answer exclusively to this board and to the members or to the citizens of this township. You may lose the endorsement of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, but will, I believe, gain the respect of law-abiding citizens in this township who want to see our roads and highways made safer for themselves and their families. Citizens of Bedford Township deserve that simple expectation. This township has been used as a supplement for the Monroe County Sheriff's Department budget for too long, and it's about time that our tax dollars get a day's work for a day's pay. That's not unreasonable expectation. No non-union township employee would last very long if they did little or nothing at their workplace, and if that is true, which I believe it is, then this should apply to everyone employed or contracted with this township. To do less is irresponsible. Are you the shepherds and guardians we have voted into office to protect us? Or are you the hired hands who run when trouble comes, leaving us unprotected and vulnerable? What do you do answers this simple question for me. P.S. If you add February 2019 into the mix, it would be 5,058 hours and 45 parts of an hour on patrol without a single traffic citation issued at a cost of $217,513.35 at $43 per hour. Never in my life have I imagined being so disappointed with the police department as I have with the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. I am certain that there are officers in that department who are dedicated police officers, and that is why I find it so difficult to understand Bedford Township's current situation, and even worse, having to voice this disappointment publicly. I don't think this board knows the struggle I face when I stand up here meeting after meeting. It would be substantially easier for me to remain silent, but I know it would haunt me if I did so. I have tried to be an asset to this board and not spur in your saddle. I have not tried to belittle anyone on this board or anyone within the Monroe County Sheriff's Department individually. My wife says it's time for me to move on, and I agree with her. I have given this board more than enough stats that any further attempts would be counterproductive. This is in no way should be viewed as a victory for the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. If I hear the Monroe County Sheriff's Department or you singing the Hallelujah Chorus, I'm going to recant what I say. Good night.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, moving on to board comments. Mr. Clements?
My only comment is not even really board-related, so I apologize, but tonight I had to miss my son's induction into Phi Theta Kappa at Monroe Community College. He's graduating with honors. It was a business administration degree, so I wanted to tell him sorry I missed it, and I am proud of you. That's it, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Montray?
Nothing.
Ms. Tinneberry?
I have something. First of all, Logan said during his first comment that we're probably fed up with him, and I want to say, Logan, I'm not fed up with you. I appreciate your dedication and your hard work. I appreciate your passion and your integrity. And I can understand your wife's point of view too, but I also know that as a board member, to have the kind of information you provide in both sides of the issue, I really appreciate that. So I'm not fed up with you. I'll never be fed up with you or any citizen that comes in with a different perspective than we have. Secondly, I'd like to thank these students sitting here for 2 hours. You know, you deserve an A, and if you leave your teacher's name with me, we'll put in a good word for you. You know, that's just amazing. A lot of times students come, and after the thing clicks and we say the pledge, they're out the door. So I appreciate you staying. I hope you learned something. And for the Cub Scout or Boy Scout? Boy Scout. You're a gentleman. I appreciate you coming as well and sitting through the meeting. I hope you earned some kind of a magnificent medal or honor for sitting here 2 hours, and your mother too. I mean, you know, it's nice to have Mom with you. So thank you all for coming and sitting through what happens in your township government. Secondly, then, I'd like to say my rebuke to this board, including myself and previous boards, for stockpiling so much money in the water fund. I've lived here 50 years. I have put that money in. I've always said for not just the water fund, but any fund, fund balance, we shouldn't be stockpiling money that taxpayers today put in. They should be getting some benefit. I should be getting some benefit for the money that I pay into the system. And now, after 50 years, we're ending it. I'm glad. I said something earlier in the meeting that if I pay, they should pay. I don't believe that. I'm glad that the new people coming in don't have to pay. But it's just wrong that we have not done a capital improvement plan on water, sewer, township assets, and figured out a way to spend money that is being stockpiled. And now we have so much of it that we don't need it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Nancy, just to clear something up that you said, they will still have to pay the tap-in fee.
Yeah, well, it's
just
too
not
bad
us.
that the Drain Commission gets it. You know, anyway, we should be using it to benefit and help support the system that people are paying in for. And then something earlier that was also said, that our asset management plan for roads, it was started, you know, recently through your committee, Paul and Paul, and I appreciate that. But it was also said that this is the first one that has been done in Monroe County, and I have to say, I worked at the Road Commission for 8 years. Ralph Lang, who has just recently passed away, started the asset management program at the Monroe County Road Commission for every single township. It was a lot of work, and he did an excellent job, and a lot of roads got improved through that kind of program in the county, and he deserves credit for what he began. And like I said, he's recently passed away. I just thought I wanted to recognize him for that, since it was said that it was the first one, but it wasn't.
Did I say it was the first one? Well, since my time of being around here, the Road Commission
Well, I
hasn't
know,
had a
but
plan,
life didn't start when you showed up
said
here.
that I did. Mr. Steiner, are you done?
I am, thank you
Oh,
very much.
Mr. Steiner.
I pass for this evening.
Mr. Francis.
Nothing.
Whoa. Ms. Hirschberger?
Okay, I have a lot, sorry. I spoke to all of you briefly about the road change. The road commission received a request from Erie Township asking that Samaria Road, where it is Lakeside, they want to change Lakeside Road to Samaria Road. So it will be one continuous name. So it would be all Samaria Road. There is a small part of Lakeside Road that is in Bedford. They want to make sure that we don't object to changing it to Samaria, the name. Name alone, that's all they're changing, from Lakeside to Samaria. So if there are no objections, I'm just going to send a letter that confirms that Bedford Township supports changing the name of Lakeside Road to Samaria Road. Currently, Samaria Road becomes Lakeside Road at the east end of Bedford and into Erie Township. Making it one continuous name would allow any current confusion.
Will anybody have to change their addresses, like from Lakeside to Samaria? Because if that's going to happen, we should probably notify them that what's going on.
I am not sure. That would be something the road commission, I'm assuming. Did you have any experience with that, Nancy, when you were at the road commission? Okay.
Well, no, by the name, yes, if a name changes on a road, they have to, the post office has to be alerted, and it does have to change. Which may their zip code and everything would have to
Does the road commission usually contact the post office, or is it something that falls on the townships? Do you know?
I really don't know. That would have been my area, and I never had to do that. So, but I do know that on Blue Bush Road there, in whatever that township is, they did change that name, and I didn't do it, so I imagine the townships did it.
Okay, I'll just check with Matt Snell at the Monroe County Road Commission on that, but I'll send them a letter saying that we approve it. As most of you know, I was at Clerks Convention. I'm completed now, so I will have my certification. But a couple things I wanted to bring to the board that we learned was cybersecurity. We had a class on cybersecurity, and I learned that through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, there are a lot of cybersecurity assessments, hygiene, reviews that they will do for townships for free.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to look into that, because I don't think that's a bad thing for our system just to be looked at, to make sure there's nothing that could be hacked, or, it's free. We also talked about Proposal 3 and QVF, qualified voter file updates. We talked about minutes and agendas. We talked about managing generational differences. And then we talked a little bit about budgeting. And the only other thing I have is Communications Committee. We had a letter, I just sat at each one of your places. It's just for suggestion, ideas. The committee doesn't want to go forward with some ideas and then the board go, that's not the direction we wanted, or that's not something we were interested in. So if you just give us your feedback, if you just send me an email or something, if there's something specific you're looking for, and then I can take that to the committee. And that's all I have.
Real quick on roads, it's very frustrating for me in this position with the situation our neighborhoods are in with the road situation. They build these neighborhoods, and the homeowners are left to take care of the neighborhoods, but they have no idea how to take care of them or what they need to do. So years go on, and 20 years later, it's like the road's failing, and now you have to go through this huge process of an SAD to get a crack seal or to get some work done. I just don't know if there's a better way, Tom, for us to do this as a board, some sort of requirement when a neighborhood is developed that there has to be some sort of an association or something formed where they put money in there and they can maintain it. Something's got to be done, because we continue to let neighborhoods build and there's no plan in place for these roads. And you watch on social media and it's like, hey, when you come into Bedford Drive, they're not coming to Bedford Drive to fix Bedford Drive. And it's to the point now where it needs a major job done. So it's frustrating because it's like, their SADs go and they fail, because now to their point where it's $10,000 to $15,000 a home. People can't, a lot of people can't afford that. So I just don't know if there's something we can look into to where it's required when you put a neighborhood together to where they have a plan in place, a 30-year plan in place to where they have to put in $50 a year or $100 a year, something minor. You know, let's be honest, 150 homes at $50 a year, that'll add up. You know, that'll be enough probably to maintain it, but they're just kind of left in the dark. And I see it every day because, you know, like I just pulled an SAD in my neighborhood to do a crack seal and possibly a microsurface. And, you know, and I got asked a bunch of questions. Well, why aren't you doing Bedford Drive? And it's like, I'm doing this on my own time, you know. You know, but it's like, I just don't know if there's something we can look at with it.
Yeah, you know, there's not a lot of these in this township, but, you know, condominiums, developments now, which are the newest thing, the roads are private, and there is a requirement in the law that the money be put into an account so that they can fix the roads as they go. But those are private developments.
But they're not all being done like
private
that.
roads, but they are supposed to be done that way.
No, I'm saying all of our subdivisions aren't, I know the private ones
No,
are.
the
Those, yeah.
subdivision, well, you're talking about public and private
Yeah.
roads. Well, public roads.
Well, not private, I'm not talking about private, I'm talking about the
Talking about
subdivision
platted
roads, platted
subdivisions.
subdivision,
Yeah.
you know. I just didn't know if
Yeah.
there's something we could put in
Hey,
place.
Paul.
Ms. Tinderberry?
Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
I live in a subdivision that has a homeowners association. We've had it since it began. We work hard to keep it up and maintain it. New people move in and they don't want to pay the dues, but there's something in the deed restrictions that says they have to. So we maintain ours. We have tried to, and Tom used to draw up the whole thing, but we have tried, and every subdivision that went in while I was clerk had a homeowners association to begin with. It's keeping that up. And this is what happens. They keep it up in the beginning, and then new people move in, and they don't want to pay the dues, and they let it fall apart. Nobody wants to put the time in. But then they complain about their roads falling apart. But they should have put the effort in to keep that. Somebody has to form a group and keep it up. You cannot, it's a public road, and you cannot make the developer put something, other than in the deed restrictions, put something together that says everybody has to pay this for the rest of their life if they don't want to. And, you know, maybe we should put out some kind of publication to say this is what happens when you don't, and this is what happens if you do. And Rick
I
is
just
in
don't
a
know if when we do
Yeah.
some sort of education, when somebody
Yeah.
does apply to subdivision,
Yeah.
hey, here's a 30-year timeline of what maintenance needs to be done. If you do not follow it, your road's gonna fail. I just wish we could do more on our end. I know we
Yeah.
can. We, you know, I wish,
we
Yeah,
can't
one-
financially.
Mr. Steiner?
You know, Nancy and I talked about this a second ago. I mean, it's probably, how many years, Nancy? Probably
Ours is,
15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Nancy and I talked about this when she was the road commission. And number one, like you said, you can't impose the developer. It's like an impact fee. You can't say, well, you're going to do this. But Nancy and I talked about preventive maintenance programs, if you could convince a developer, that says, right then and there, take out a special assessment on the entire subdivision, and then that number could be extremely low, but then the special assessment goes against your tax rolls. So, but again, you can't force that upon anybody. That would have to be the developer's idea. I mean, we have a little more control under PUD type things, but we still can't demand that they do those things, unfortunately.
It's just,
But I think, I mean, it's just like your car, your home, everything. You should put a preventive maintenance plan together when they start a development and let the builder pass it on. Granted, the builder's gonna say, well, I don't wanna do it because if I don't sell half my lots, I'm paying, you know, a special assessment fee every month. Well, they're gonna put that money back on the piece of land they're gonna sell to build a house on anyway. So, I mean, people gotta start thinking about taking care of what you start with.
yeah. So, the week of March 23rd sounds like they're gonna start forming up for the sidewalk, and getting prepared to pour it, just so everybody knows, if you wanna stop out there and take a look at what's going on. I do too wanna thank the Beautification for all their hard work over the years. You know, like Nancy said, it's, you know, they didn't state half of what they've, you know, have done over the years. I mean, with the, you know, Santa Claus and I mean, everything that goes, you know, a lot of the Christmas tree lightings and stuff like that. So we really appreciate you. Our roads, are, in my opinion, the best they've been in years. I mean, they're looking, in my opinion, really good. And I think the program we have in place is a program that's going to continue to maintain them properly. You know, so I think that was our biggest issue over the years, is they just weren't maintained. So I think we're setting ourselves up right now for the future. You know, we're just about over that hump of major projects. You know, after this year, you know, we will hopefully, other than a few other projects, you know, the second cap on Crab Road, Adler Road, and, you know, a couple others, you know, projects will be over that of just maintaining. And I think that'll be a lot easier for us. We've stuck $1 million a year and more. I mean, you know, so I think it's a good thing what this board has done, and I'm really proud of it. I just want to say real quick, with April 2nd, Autism Speaks celebrates the start of its signature campaign, Light It Up Blue, along with the international autism community in recognition of UN-sanctioned World Autism Awareness Day and World Autism Month throughout April. Light It Up Blue landmarks worldwide go for Blue for Autism Awareness. It Lights It Up Blue campaign marks the start of Autism Awareness Month in April. This year, more than 11,000 buildings are joining the campaign in a show of support for the 70 million people around the world who are affected by this disorder. I want to personally thank Jim Nyhan for all of his hard work locally, for what he does for you know, autism awareness, and I appreciate that. Look for him on Facebook if you want to find out some of the events you can get involved in. And here's the blue lights. We do have them in our office. Stop by the office and grab one. So those are being provided through the James Nyhan Autism Awareness Fund. So moving on, I just would like people to know Blizzard Fest is going on as far as planning stages right now. They're going to continue to work on it to bring an even better event to downtown Temperance. You know, we're really promoting the events in downtown Temperance, and I think this is going to be an event that's going to continue on for years to come and be something really great. You know, it already is, in my opinion. But so other than that, if nobody has any further comments, we stand adjourned.
Mm-hmm.